I'm gonna do everything that it takes to create the perfect birth for me and for them and for my family. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Caitlin Hill, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and like and share this video. I just want to start out by saying that I am not a medical professional in any way, shape, or form. I am simply just sharing my own personal experience. Here we are. I thought we'd just have like a cozy little chat today. I have my tea here, my little Sheila G cacao tea, and Matisse and I actually just did a power clean of the house, and the babies are out for a walk, and I'm actually alone in the house right now, which just feels so weird and quiet. I am rarely alone. I want to say almost never. So it's really nice to just sit here and to be able to chat with you, sort of reflect on things that life happenings, just so much. There is such a shift going on right now with motherhood, and I really feel like people are really starting to wake up and feel empowered about this experience of pregnancy, mothering, postpartum, birth. The whole thing is really starting to come to the forefront, and there clearly is women that are really wanting change, and I am really grateful to be a part of that shift, this reawakening of women that are seeing that what has been is now no longer, it's not served us anymore, and it's time to step into a new time of taking charge in ourselves and creating our own experiences and our own realities when it comes to our destinies and our lives. Basically, I have been on that journey for a long time. I mean, I'm kind of going into a different topic here, but I've always considered myself to be all about women and women empowerment. I think there's some really interesting things that are going on with that right now, which I will touch on another time, but it still blows my mind that birth is happening the way that it's happening now in the hospital setting. That's not to say that I don't think that every birth needs to be at home. I do think that there is a middle ground and a sweet spot for a lot of women, which is, birthing centers or having the proper care, not putting people into this high risk category where suddenly they're not able to have home births. I think it kind of limits people to be able to make choices that they feel comfortable with at this point in time. And that was something that sort of I was left with. And I'm super happy with the path that I chose, because it led me to having a free birth, even though I felt like, oh my God, I don't have any choices. I'm so stoked that I did free birth my twin girls at home, and it was like the best thing that ever happened to me. And I really don't think that if I had been put into that high risk category with having twins, that I would have had a free birth. I probably would have just had a home birth with a midwife. I think all of the steps that I took that seemed really difficult at the time led me to, of course, having the birth of my dreams at home. Basically, how that initially started with wanting to have, the desire to have a home birth started with my first daughter, Safia. I wanted to have a home birth with her, and I basically completely chose out of alignment of how I was actually feeling, because I had this really strong narrative that I had a low pain tolerance, which was totally not even true. I think it was just something I must have picked up from when I was a kid and sort of continued on with this narrative, and it became a belief around myself because I just repeated it all the time and just thought that that's what I had or was, And so I would look at home birth videos and I was always like, wow, I want to do that, but I can't do that because I can't, I have such a low pain tolerance that I won't be able to do that. Basically with her, I chose out of alignment and had a hospital birth because I felt that it was safer. But honestly, to be honest, when I look back on it, I'm like, I actually didn't do the proper work that I needed to do to reach the point of having a home birth. Like, I didn't do all the deep shadow work that I really needed to work through. And I did something called Hypno Babies with Safia, and I think it kind of just scratched the surface of rewiring my subconscious around birth, but it wasn't enough to really truly rewire me completely and get into the depths of the healing that needed to be done in terms of just completely shifting the way that I was looking at it. And I had so much unlearning, so much more unlearning that I had to do that I didn't even realize. So I remember with her sort of thinking like, oh, maybe I'll just like have her at home, even though I had like planned this hospital birth and everything. I was not ready to have a hospital or to have a home birth. Sorry, what did I just say? Home birth. I was wanting to have her at home, but I when I look back on it, I totally wasn't ready for that. I still thought that giving birth in the hospital was safer, and to be honest, I mean, like I said, because I had done such little work on it, I don't think that I would have been able to reach the place of trust that I needed to get to in order to fully give birth at home with her. I was still very much like scared. Of course, it was my first baby, and I just believed everyone else around me. There were some things that I did differently in that birth. Like I said, I was still different for sure in the hospital room. Like I had this like big peace sign over the clock, and I wanted to play music, and I wanted to have this like natural birth, even though I ended up having, oh my God, a shot of morphine, Pitocin, an epidural, and then they vacuumed her out in the end. So yeah, I guess that's about as natural as it gets in the hospital, but it wasn't the birth that I wanted. And it makes me sad because I know now, like looking back on that I could have had her at home easily. I just didn't work on this enough before that birth. So it was a beautiful birth in so many ways because I still had her skin to skin on me afterwards. She's a healthy baby, and she was just like, I remember the second she came up on my skin, I knew she was good without even having to look at her. I got to have my partner there with me. There were so many beautiful things about that birth, and it was my daughter. It was my first daughter. So, I don't want to take away from that experience. It's just that I do look back now and I do go, wow, like I could have just had her upstairs in the bathtub, like easily if I had just allowed that to happen. But I really wasn't allowing that to happen. So anyways, fast forward, I guess 2.5 years was when I got pregnant again. Oh my gosh, it feels like another lifetime ago. But for when I, found out that I was pregnant, I was like, I'm having a home birth. Like, I'm going to align myself with a midwifery that supports home births because not all of them do. And it was one that was like close to our house. So it all felt like it was really like, oh, this is like so easy. Like it's already planned out. Like I know exactly what's going to go down. Surprise. Then found out, I was pregnant with twins at my 9-week ultrasound. That was through they scheduled that through the midwifery. I funnily enough had my first appointment, like phone call appointment, because this was during the COVID time. So I was like having like phone call appointments and stuff. Initial appointment on the same day that I found out that I was pregnant with twins from the ultrasound. So I had the ultrasound appointment in the morning, and then I had the midwifery appointment on the phone in the afternoon. And I was just in so much shock. Like I was bawling. you know, and then in the phone call right off the bat, she tells me that I am high risk and that I am not going to be able to be supported by midwives anymore, and that I'd have to go to an obstetrician. And I can remember at that point thinking to myself, okay, well, I guess this is just my destiny now, and I'm gonna have to just go along with this, you know. I guess that means probably having a C-section, definitely having a hospital birth, like for sure. Having to just go along with what my doctor was gonna say. I can remember like on the phone with the midwife, and I said, can you align me with the most holistic obstetrician? From there, they aligned me with an obstetrician. Yeah, I was like, I guess this is just what's gonna be happening now. And I started going to the appointments. Right off the bat, my gut was saying to me, I can't imagine giving birth in front of this OB. That was what my gut was telling me straight off the bat. And even still, I remember getting back in the car with Matisse because he wasn't allowed to come to any of the appointments with me because of COVID. And so I remember getting back in the car and telling him that, and he was just like, it's fine, like, it's all good, you know, like, this person, this OB, they know what they're doing, and that's that, you know, that's apparent, you know, this is one of the top OBs where I live, so this is someone that has dealt with, like, a lot of twin pregnancies and is sort of like the twin obstetrician, so I was like, okay, just go along with this. Even though everything inside of me was saying no, I was still like, no, Caitlin, this is what you have to do because you're high risk and therefore you're dangerous. Like, you know, there's something wrong with me is what it felt like. So basically from there, continued to go to the appointments. And then I guess it was probably around I don't know, 20 weeks, something like that. I was doing yoga upstairs in our bedroom, and we have this like gorgeous view of the mountains and the trees, and it's just so lovely. Our house is like a sanctuary to me, so I have a very strong connection here. I feel very safe here, and I can remember just being in our room looking at the window and seeing like the birds fly by and the wind going through the trees. And I just, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. But I just said to myself, this is where I want to give birth. Right here where I feel safe and connected. And I know that I'm going to be safe and my babies are going to be safe and that I'm going to do everything that it takes to create the perfect birth for me and for them and for my family. And that was the truth. That was what felt good to me, was when I realized that. So from there on out, it was like there was no going back, really. I started to allow myself to look at birth videos again and sort of slowly start to read. Like I started reading Orgasmic Birth and all these, you know, allowed myself to look at all these things, because when I found out that I wasn't going to be having a home birth, I was like, I'm not going to do any research, like nothing. I'm just going to go along, and I don't even want to like know about it because I'm just going to want to give birth at home, and that's too upsetting for me to know that I can't do that. So I allowed myself to start looking at all these sources and just informing myself again. And the more I looked, the more it was all just there for me. Like so much good information. And it just felt like, just, yes, this is my dharma. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of this movement of, you know, like, giving birth at home in power and feeling good about it and knowing that I'm doing what's right for me. And so, there was no going back. That fire was lit, and I was like, all right, this is how it's going to be from now on. The next step for me was to talk to my partner Matisse about it and to sort of see where he was at. And like off the bat, he was like, well, no, like it's just not safe. Like you have to give birth in the hospital. And I was like, I'm not against going to the hospital, like if we have to, but I want to give birth here. You know, like if we need to go to the hospital for some kind of reason, that's a whole different thing. But like, I want to have these babies at home. And he was like, I think he just saw the spark in my eyes of how passionate I was about it. And he was like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Like no midwives were going to support us. So this meant doing it on our own, which like, I guess I should have been scared about, but I mean, I don't even mean that really. Like, I mean, some people would think that that's absolutely crazy, but for me, like to give birth at home, I'm like alone. I'm like, that is exactly what I want. I don't want to be in a room with, you know, like 10 other people staring at me, telling me to push, like monitoring me. None of that this time. I want to just be like, give birth like animals do, in the night, in the dark, trusting and allowing my body to unfold in the way that it's supposed to, you know, letting all of the hormonal matrix allow itself to work the way that it's been created to in this brilliant way. And so yeah, from there he was just like, okay, well, like I want to learn more about this and let's, you know, can we take courses? And we took a course on it, a free birth course. We were just like watching the whole thing and like just looking at each other, just being like, this makes so much sense. From there, I was like, okay, I'm going to take this on. Like, this is going to be a huge mountain for me to climb. Like, I took it so seriously. I ate exceptionally well. Yeah, I ate exceptionally well. I did yoga, I would say 4 times a week. I did a ton of journaling and deep shadow work. I read a book called Mind Change that was absolutely incredible. I began doing EFT tapping to work through any beliefs that I'd had, any limiting beliefs. I really just started to explore myself, was what I did. Allowed myself and gave myself the time to really do that. Like it was like, okay, I'm gonna dedicate my whole life to working on me and working through what I have to work through in order to give birth to these babies at home. Then from there, I continued to go to my OB appointments, and initially I was planning on just going and continuing on with her. To the very end, that was my plan, was just to be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna keep going, and in the end, I just won't call her, basically, when I'm gonna be giving birth. And I had decided after 33 weeks that I didn't want to have any more ultrasounds done, which with a high-risk pregnancy, it's like constant ultrasounds. Like I'd already done like 5. And on my last appointment, I went and I told the OB that I didn't want to do another ultrasound, and they were basically like, well, I don't know how to treat you and give you prenatal care if you don't do an ultrasound. So I was like, well, that's limiting, because there's like a million other things that you could do to treat me or I don't even want to say treat, because again, it sounds like I'm talking about an illness when I'm talking about pregnancy, but there's a million other things that can be done for prenatal care that don't involve an ultrasound. I was really firm on not wanting to have the ultrasound done again, but since I was in their office and the power shift and the power dynamic was in their hands and not in mine, I felt like I had to go through with having another ultrasound. So I had another ultrasound. I knew exactly what the answer was already, which was that they were both head down and they were both really similar in size, just like a few ounces different. I already knew that based off of my own intuition, because I'd been doing all of this work on my own intuition. Basically, I was gonna have to walk away, because the thing is it only gets more intense from there. Like it's not like, oh, well, they kind of like stopped calling after a while. No. Like I I knew that I was gonna have to have more ultrasounds every time. I was gonna have to start coming in for appointments probably weekly. I was gonna be watched like under a magnifying glass. And it's not for the benefit of me and the babies, it's for their own liability. So I was like, okay, I will go through with this ultrasound, but in my head, I was like, I'm like for sure gonna have to walk away. And yeah, from there, basically, I found a doula on Instagram. Actually, I had seen her, she had supported another one of my friends in a birth, and she had had a home birth, and I was like, oh my God, like she had a home birth for her first baby, and this was her doula. I need to follow this doula because that's amazing. Like for first time mom, like having a home birth, like wow. So I started following her, and I actually contacted her one day, and I was like, this is where I'm at. This is like the situation that I'm in. And she was just like, yeah, like you have to advocate for yourself. Like you have to do what feels best for you. That's just how it has to be. And so yeah, we actually hired her, and I was like, I just need you to be in our corner and for along for the journey. And I really wanted to have her at the birth, and also just to have like an extra set of hands around as well, because I knew that, you know, with having Safi there, having Matisse there, and then, you know, 2 more babies coming onto the scene, it was like, we need as much support as possible. And just, she was just so in alignment with everything that we had, you know, were feeling and were talking about. And also she had had a free birth herself. So I knew that she believed in it, and she believed in birth, basically. Then from there, I walked away from my OB. I basically just sent an email being like, hey, like I'm actually switching care providers. I didn't tell them that I was planning on having a home birth, because like, no, don't do that. I just was like, I'm switching care providers, and that's what I'm doing. And yeah, and I got like bombarded with calls and emails, and I just like didn't really respond to any of them. And I actually got a call from the OB, and I listened to the voice message, and I was like, yeah, okay, bye. I don't want to see you anymore. And that's okay, because I can make choices for myself. Thank you very much. And yeah, it was after that, like after walking away, I felt so free. I felt like I just had these like chains attached to me for, you know, a better half of my pregnancy. And it was like this chained to this system of birth and the way that it has been created. And I just wanted nothing to do with it. And I felt just like this massive weight had been lifted when I chose to finally walk away and do that. I felt like, yes, like I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do it. And it was scary. I felt scared because I was like, okay, now I'm really taking responsibility for my own journey. And if something goes wrong, then it's my fault. It's no one else's fault to blame. And I just, yeah, it was scary, but it was freeing, and I felt alive. And I felt like this was what I was meant to do. That's the only way I could really put it, is like, I just knew deep, deep, deep in my bones that I was doing the right thing for me. And so yeah, it was very empowering, very freeing. And from there, I just continued on. I really tapped into myself in a deep way, really got in tune with my intuition and listening for things and paying attention, and just this deep knowing that I had never felt to that extent before. And continued basically pampering myself, taking care of myself, spending as much time with Safi as I possibly could, because I was so worried about becoming a mother of 3. And just, yeah, I just kept on going basically until the very end. And like, I was sharing weekly updates on my channel as well of what I was going through. And I never shared when I walked away. I just shared that I was going to be giving birth in the hospital, and I was going to have an OB. And then I just, when I walked away, I never shared on my channel that I had done that, because I didn't want to tell anyone that we were planning on having a home birth. And so literally we kept this between me, Matisse, Safia, our doula, and then I told one friend that I knew was going to support it. No one knew. Nobody knew. So yeah, it was like, you know, I read this quote one time, and it's like, when you get a calling for something, it's not a conference call. That's a call for you. You know, by going around and telling people, first of all, you don't need anyone else's justification or validation around it. It's like, if you trust in it and you want to do that, just keep listening to you. And that's very strongly how I felt. I took that very close to heart, obviously. At 40 weeks, so I was 39 weeks and 7 days, obviously waiting for the birth to start at any point. It basically just did. It started up on its own. I remember Sarah Buckley, because that's another thing. I had been reading so many books and listening to so many podcasts on birth. I informed myself so much. Like, I've done hours and hours of endless research, and just have taken in and soaked in like a sponge so much information around birth and physiological birth. And I remember something that Sarah Buckley said, and it was, people actually don't really know what makes labor start. It's sort of like a key going into the lock and unlocking. That's just, you know, all of the hormones are all unfolding in a certain type of way, and it's sort of just like, okay, this is happening now. Okay, now it's happening. And so I was just waiting for that to happen, basically. And it was 39-7. So on their actual due date was when they were born. Is that by chance, or is that just a coincidence? I don't know. I think it's a pretty crazy thing. Yeah, I mean, they were born at home here. It was the most epic experience of my life. I was definitely not surprised by how hard it was, because I had already gone through a birth before, so I knew what a contraction felt like. I knew that it was going to be challenging. I knew the depths that I was going to have to go to beforehand, and that's sort of another thing that I had been mentally preparing myself, because the first time when I started getting to that place, I was like, no, like, I want an epidural. So I knew that I was going to have to like really go through it all. And yeah, just basically was here and just let it happen. Like, that really is what happened. Like, I just let it happen. Because I think that if I hadn't let it happen and I hadn't done all the work on myself mentally, that I easily could have convinced myself that I had to go to the hospital at several points. And I very easily could have convinced everyone that was around me that I would have wanted to go. So yeah, it was hard, and it was like just so humbling and so incredible, and it was exactly the birth that I needed. And looking back on it, I'm just like, yeah, like I did that. And forever that is now a part of my DNA and my blueprint, and that's been passed down to all three of my girls, and I am forever grateful for that. And I would have not done it any other way than the way that I did. I have zero regrets about my birth. Zero. And that's a pretty incredible thing to be able to say, to look at my birth in this raw, real way, and to really say, okay, that was epic. I really do think that part of mothering has been taken from women's experiences, because it's just disregarded. It's like, it's just birth. It's not that big of a deal. It's just one day of your life. Like, just, you don't have to be conscious for it. You don't have to be aware of what's going on. Just take the drugs, do the thing, just let it happen. You just want to have a happy, healthy baby. Well, yeah, you want to have a happy, healthy baby. Of course, that's the bare minimum. But having an empowering birth story, that empowers you as a mother, and that's forever. You being a mother is forever. So it is not just a day for me. Birth is forever. And I constantly feel like my birth just gets better and better every single day, the more that I live it. And the more that I have look back on it, I'm like, wow, like that has shaped me of how I am as a person and how I look and do everything else from that point forward. And that's how I live now, is making choices from a place of empowerment and wanting to feel good, and I wanting to raise strong, powerful daughters that also feel good about themselves. And it is just, it's incredible. And this is what shifting this next paradigm is going to be like. It's time for us to be real and for us to step into our power and to really be in alignment with what our own dharma is. And I really think that being empowered is the first step in being able to step into that light inside of ourselves. So I am obviously very passionate about this, and I hope for you, and wherever you do choose to give birth, whether that's at home or in the hospital, that you feel empowered wherever it is that you are giving birth. So yeah, that's my journey of how I got from basically going to have a hospital birth with you know, an OB, to just simply giving birth at home in the water in a birthing pool at home with my daughter and my husband by my side. And yeah, it was just such an incredible experience, and I could literally talk about this nonstop. So thank you so much for watching this week's video. If you have any questions, you can always contact me at hello@caitlin-hill.com. And please hit that subscribe button and like and share this video. I'm sending light and love to wherever you are at on your journey. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week. Ciao for now.